Happy Podcast Day, everybody. It's here once again this year. It's International Podcast Day, and we couldn't be more proud once again to bring you the event this year. Guys, can you believe it's been a year already since the last one?
A lot of great things have been happening in podcasting, and in some ways it feels like, it's been too long, and in other ways it's been like, wow, we just finished International Podcast Day.
Yeah, it seems like with the conferences that we've been attending, all the social media we do, the constant recording that we do, it always seems like podcasting, of course, is in our blood. But yeah, it literally feels like it just happened a couple months ago. But first and foremost, thanks to everybody out there in the podcasting community that are making this event happen, sharing the hashtag Podcast Day. That have worked collectively with our team to make things happen. I'm just very excited, man. I know we have a great lineup this year. I think we've pushed the envelope a little bit from last year as well, but I'm very excited that International Podcast Day 2016 is here. We're live. Things are happening. I'm really excited to get this thing going.
Well, I am too, because for the last hour I've been pacing and my legs are now tired. So I'm glad I'm sitting and doing this instead. It's a heck of a lot more fun.
Legs are tired, but the vocal cords are never tired.
Got to protect the moneymaker.
No, it's a good thing I'm not a singer. I'd be out there on the corner of the freeway with my I'm a Vietnam vet sign. So it's a good thing. But once again, welcome. And for those of you that are new to International Podcast Day, we certainly welcome you. I just want to give you a little bit of backstory because people often ask a lot how this transpired. And some of you perhaps have heard the story. I've told it a million times, but we're going to do it one more time. And that is back in 2014, I was driving down to Los Angeles. And forgive me, but I ran out of podcasts to listen to. And I should have been struck dead right then because of that. But instead, I turned this thing on that they call radio. And I was listening to a broadcast, and they went into a commercial. And they had an advertisement for National Senior Citizens Day. I thought to myself, why do not we have a day for podcasting? Something to celebrate, a way to say thanks. So that same year, I discussed it with Dave, and we decided to maybe put something together for a National Podcast Day. So then I went out to the communities, to some of my great friends and fellow podcasters, Daniel and Ray and Dave Jackson and Nick Suberling. And we first presented in 2014 the first National Podcast Day. And in respect, then, it was quite smaller in nature as compared to today. But it was a great success, and we had a good time with it. But one of the constant feedbacks we got was people felt national did not include people outside the U.S. And there was no intention to exclude anyone. So we rebranded to International Podcast Day. Last year, we did this same kind of format from, I believe, about 12, 14 countries in various languages. And we're going to do the same again this year. So why are we starting here in the U.S. on the 29th? Well, it's already the 30th in New Zealand, in which our first host is going to be a part of from New Zealand. So that's why we actually start here, because you know what? It's 5 o'clock somewhere, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So over the next 30 plus hours, there's one important thing that we all need to remember. Enjoy it and use the hashtag Podcast Day wherever you're at. Put it on your mailbox, put it in Twitter, stamp it on your forehead. It doesn't matter, but use the hashtag Podcast Day. For the last couple years, we have trended #1 on social media during the event, and it's quite a spectacle that we're very proud of. The other thing you can do is go to International Podcast Day, and there's a promo link there where you can get banners, logos, audio content to help say, hey, I'm Podcast Day proud. Change your social media icon, play the audio promo on your own podcast, and away we go. So I was thinking the other day, guys, what else goes on September 30th? Who is competing with us? I certainly know that Daniel's favorite one is Talk Like a Pirate Day. Arr, right, Daniel?
19th. Yeah.
Which is quite great. But there are some other things happening on September 30th. For example, it's also National Chewing Gum Day. I got a pack right here. It's also National Mud Pack Day. I don't even know what it is. I think it's where they put all that goop on their face.
Little boys across the world love that one, probably.
I could
The time to
imagine.
get dirty, exactly. Trek it all through the house.
The other thing, it's Hot Muddled Cider Day.
So many
You know-
great events going on.
You know what? That's not what's in my cup. It is also International Translation Day. That's an interesting one. And finally, it is also Extra Virgin Olive Day. So when you combine all those, they don't have the level that International Podcast Day does. Because we're here to celebrate a craft and an art that we're proud of, we're happy about, and we're going to celebrate. So, yeah, go ahead.
And what's most amazing about podcasts compared to these other things? I mean, mulled cider. Okay. People might say, yeah, I enjoy some mulled cider certain times of the year and such. But can you ask them, does that change your life? Has it improved your relationships? Has it inspired you? Has it done something radical in your life, in your family, in your business, in your passions, your hobbies? Now, there may be the few people who can say, yes, totally. But most people couldn't care less. For podcasting, though, I think you go out there and you ask a podcast fan, ask them, have podcasts changed your life? And the answer will often be yes. I've been encouraged. I've laughed when I needed to. I've cried when I needed to. I've been inspired. I've gotten information I needed. I've built relationships. Now, for me, some of my best friends are because of podcasting. And I think podcasts, unlike many other things, podcasts do truly change the world and change people one audience member at a time.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Daniel. It's one of those things where you can point to podcasting, as you mentioned, and show that there's been progress in individual lives. You know, the podcasts have literally changed people's lives. We talked about it last year with the International Podcast Day Gratitude Award, where Katie Bowman in her podcast is literally changing the lives of people. And you can go out there and you look at the iTunes reviews. You can talk to individuals. You can connect with the other podcast listening and audio listening enthusiasts. And there's something serious behind what we're doing here with podcasting. Yeah, we get behind the mics, we share our stories, we share our struggles, and a lot of people connect with that, and we connect with our listeners at the same time. So I think it's an amazing medium where we're able to, connect. Like you said, you could probably have a couple, mulled spice enthusiasts that come together and hang out and have a little get together. But, there's nothing quite like the podcasting community and the listeners and everybody that's out there making the difference day in and day out, week in, week out. And it's just an amazing community to be part of. What we're doing here at Podcast Day, it's just not about promoting the day. It's also about connecting with other podcasters. It's about connecting with friends and enthusiasts of your favorite podcast. I mean, the amount of people that we all have been able to connect with, both podcasters, resources, individuals, listeners themselves, has been amazing. So, I really encourage everybody on this day to go out there, search the hashtag Podcast Day, connect with other friends, find new friends, find the resources to make your podcast better. And also, as a listener, if you're not a podcaster, you're going to find some great shows out there. And as Daniel said, a lot of these podcasts change your life. And I think for all of us, I think that's very true.
So certainly Podcast Day would not be possible without people behind the scenes. And we really need to tip our hats off to those that have worked so hard to put this event together over the last couple of years. Anybody that's put on any kind of event, it's very tasking. It's very daunting. And things come right down to the wire. I don't care how far back you plan. There's unforeseen circumstances and issues that arise that you have to take care of. And the way we do this medium electronically adds another component. People aren't flying to a conference. We're using technology. So without further ado, I really want to thank the original founders of International Podcast Day, which are Dave Lee, Daniel J. Lewis, Ray Ortega, Dave Jackson, and Nick Suberling. And of course, this year, who also provide us assistance was Corey Finneran. And a special thank you to Jessica Cooperman. And none of this would be possible without them. It's a team effort. Yes, we have discussions. We have disagreements. But you know what? We always come together and make it happen for you, the community, the podcasters, the listeners, the podcast companies, and those that have never heard the term podcast. And that's what we're to do with this. We are to reach out and touch people so they can grasp what we're doing and have so much enjoyment, whether they want to podcast themselves or if they just want to be a fan of a show. I'd also like to thank the sponsors. You know, International Podcast Day sponsorship is not about money. And what do I mean by that? The reason that we're doing it is a couple reasons. Number one, to add validity to what we're doing. And number two, all the monies that come in from sponsorships goes right back in to make each year bigger and better. And that's the important thing to remember. And it'd be very difficult to do some of these things without them. So, Dave, do you have those in front of you?
Yeah. Our sponsors have been playing a huge role for us planning the events. Our platinum sponsor, Blueberry. Blueberry is a great service in the podcasting space. If you're not familiar with them, Blueberry is actually a full service podcasting company. It provides podcast hosting, stats, advertising opportunities. They are the home to the PowerPress podcasting plugin for WordPress. I think a lot of us are familiar with that. And they're actually offering a very good promotion right now. So for this week only, or for this the remaining of the week, it'll close on February 30th in the evening. You can use the promo code Blueberry 3M, and that's BLUBRRY, and they're offering 3 months free hosting over at Blueberry. This is going to include free migration, pro stats, a free WordPress site if needed. Otherwise, you can power up with PowerPress. Blueberry and what Todd and those guys are doing over there have been fantastic to us, and I can't thank you guys enough for being part of what you're doing. Spreaker is actually our gold sponsor. I know we've met Spreaker in person, Rob Greenlee and the CEO and a lot of those people over there. Spreaker.com actually gives you the tools to create, distribute, and measure your own podcast online. You can create yours now. New podcasters, if you're starting a podcast, you can actually use the promo code Podcast Day, and you can get a free month of their broadcaster plan, which I think is really cool. Of course, we're using FireTalk. You guys are all on here right now. FireTalk is actually our official streaming partner. We're happy to have engaged and broadcast via their platform. Our silver sponsor, Podfest, is actually an international conference with podcasters from Canada, China, UK, and Israel. Those ones are already confirmed to be in attendance in February 2017. You can sign up now at podfest.us. And also The Messengers, a podcast documentary. Dave Jackson's actually going to be on at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to talk about The Messengers and what's going on with him and Chris, the producer and the director over there. Also like to thank Hani from Simple Podcast Press. He is also our silver sponsor. It is the only podcast player designed to grow your audience and supercharge your email list. Use the code IPD25 and you can save 25% off. And of course, rounding out, Steve, we do have our bronze sponsors. Want to thank pod2pod.com, Jason Bryant with Matt Talk Online, and Natalie Ekdahl, the host of Biz Chicks podcast. And you can find all those things, internationalpodcastday.com/our-supporters. Great to have them on board. Really appreciate everybody that's been on board. Make sure you check out their sessions. It's going to be in some amazing sessions going on.
And their sessions won't be giant commercials. So don't worry about being advertised to. Yes, there will be a little promotion of their products and services, of course, but their information will be powerful and helpful and encouraging and entertaining. You will want to not sleep for the next 30 plus hours because there's going to be so much great content coming.
Yeah, Blueberry is actually going to be doing a session called From Branding to Promotion. So they're going to be putting it all together. They're going to show you how to optimize your branding, your podcast feed, and your website to successfully promote your podcast. There's a lot of things they're going to be talking about with Spreaker. It's going to be great. They're going to be talking about the past, present, and future of podcasting. Like I said, they're going to have Rob Sesternino, and with Rob Greenlee is there. And then also Blueberry is going to do another session called Podcast Audience Engagement and Metrics That Matter. So as Daniel said, it's not going to be an hour of commercial. It's going to be real practical tools and resources that you can use as a podcaster to really hone the craft and really build on what you've already established with your show.
Well, thank you for that, Dave. And we are going to have a total of how many countries on the stream?
We have a total of 17 countries represented. And as you mentioned at the top of the show, last year we had 11 countries represented, which was only a third of our stream. So this year I was able to reach out, and it's been amazing to reach out. We have individuals, as you mentioned, from New Zealand, from Israel, Sweden, France, Switzerland, Finland, Spain, the UK, Canada, Italy, Mexico. I know I'm probably leaving one out. United Arab Emirates, India. We're going to have all of these countries represented. So whereas last year we only had 33% of our stream that were outside of the United States, I'm proud to say that we were able to fit 50% of our audience or of our participants are from international countries. And so I think it's great. I think we have a very diverse selection of podcasters and content that they're going to be presenting on. So yeah, 16 countries represented. First of all, thank you so much for everybody that reached out. I do know that there was a couple countries. Someone from Singapore contacted us, a couple people I reached out in Japan that we just couldn't work out schedules. So I'm pretty sure if a few of those would have worked out, we would have had 20 countries represented, but I'm still very pleased with 17 overall. So it's an exciting time in podcasting. It truly speaks to the internationality of what we're doing here.
How many of those sessions will be in different languages?
This year, I think there will only be one. Okay. And I think that's the individual from Mexico. Last year we had, I think, 4 or 5 different sessions, and that's one of the things when we always reach out, we tell everybody, hey, do it in your native tongue if you want to. But as I listen to their podcast, they're all actually in English, and so that seemed to be the easiest way for them to be. So I believe we only have one this year, but always things to look forward to.
And you can check out all of these events, the schedule of these official live events over at internationalpodcastday.com/events. So you can make sure that you don't miss the session that you really want. Set the reminders for yourself. All of those times are in Pacific Daylight Time. And during the majority of our conversation, we'll be referring to times in Pacific Daylight Time. That's GMT -7. So make sure you adjust for that in your own time zone. That's over at internationalpodcastday.com/events.
And I did also just post over there a PDF version, so you can print it out, carry it in your car, whatever you want to do to know what's coming up. Real quick, Dave, I got to thank you again for what you've done with this schedule. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you pull it off. I know last night there was some crunch issues and some things going on, but how you've been able to reach out and touch these podcasters all over the world is just, it's remarkable. I mean, I wouldn't want to do it.
Oh, it's a blast. I love connecting internationally with everybody. And the great part is what I've always said with International Podcast Day, it's the community has built this. We just came up with the concept, as you mentioned, back in 2014, laid the foundation, and we grew from 6 hours in 2014 to 30 hours last year, and we're doing even more this year. And so it's all thanks to the community of reaching out to us, me reaching out to them, and just saying, I want to be a part of this event. It's really grassroots. And so anytime, I reach out to a podcaster that may be in Switzerland or France or Scotland or India, wherever it may be. We had people from Argentina last year. They're anxious to be a part of it. And so I'm happy to be a part of it and to reach out and communicate with these people. So yeah, thank you for everything you've done on the back end too, with all the technical side.
Sure. Couple more shout outs that are real important, and then we'll get into some cool stuff. Number one, Scott over at N7 Media. And Scott, you're awesome, and I appreciate what you're doing. What we're doing here in the studio is sending a feed to an IceCast server, which on N7 Media, Hostile FM, and Twisted Mix FM, they are broadcasting this live to all of their DJ sites. And we really appreciate that effort that you're going through. And, it's really remarkable what people are doing. Say, hey, I want to do this. Can I help in some way? And you've really stepped in to be able to broadcast the audio of this session to all of these DJ sites. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, if you guys are interested in the audio only, I know we had someone on Twitter just mention it. If we have an audio only, I'd recommend going to n7mradio.com. That's the place to get the audio only if you can't get the either the Fire Talk app, or if you can't be at your desk, or if you just have a weaker connection. That's the place to do it.
Also, Podster Magazine, in the September issue, they did a full spread about International Podcast Day, and we really appreciate what they've done for our movement in the celebration of our day. Daniel, you want to talk about Cincinnati Business Courier for a minute?
Yeah, this was a great opportunity that I had recently. That Cincinnati Business Courier, their gentleman, Steve Watkins, one of their authors there who writes about a variety of topics, called me on the phone and wanted to talk about podcasting, International Podcast Day. He normally covers finances as well as banking, insurance, and sports business, but he was interested in podcasting. He listens to podcasts himself, and he wanted to cover this. So he called me. He talked a bit about my background in podcasting. We talked about podcasting overall, like what makes podcasting exciting, what makes it hot, what makes it so engaging to listeners and viewers of podcasts. And then we talked about International Podcast Day. So he wrote this up for the Cincinnati Business Courier, which will publish in their issue tomorrow on International Podcast Day, as well as they recorded a very short TV interview with me that will appear on Channel 12 in Cincinnati at 6:30 in the morning on Sunday, a little bit after International Podcast Day. But I'm super grateful for the coverage and a great opportunity to meet him, to build a relationship with him. And it's funny that the photographer that came later to take some photos and get the video, he and I were talking about podcasts, and he told me the podcast he listens to. And he was recently interviewed by another Cincinnati podcaster that I didn't know existed, another podcaster that had launched only a few weeks ago. So it was really neat to meet another Cincinnati podcaster through the person photographing me because of my interview about podcasting. This gets into a meta world, but there's a link which I'll post in the chat. It's on bizjournals.com. And if you just search International Podcast Day or podcasting, you'll probably find it. And I posted the link in our live chat here.
Podcasting has truly become international. And one of the things I love doing is sitting back and watching what people are doing with Podcast Day. There's a lot of components to International Podcast Day. And one of the things that we tout is make it your day. Do what you want to celebrate Podcast Day. And Dave, would you mind going over just a couple of things that people are doing this time?
Yeah, Podcast Day, when I mentioned that Podcast Day has gotten a lot larger, I mean, from our side, we're still doing the 30 plus hours of broadcasting, and that's sort of our bread and butter. We want to represent the international nature of podcasters in the community, and that's what we're doing here. But one thing we've always told people is make podcast day your day. Do what you want. What are you going to do on podcast day? And I think it's great. We have some really cool things that have been happening. If anybody has followed, you need to check out hashtag Ozpod. That's OZPOD, Ozpod 2016. And it's a massive podcasting conference put on by Australians ABC Radio. And they have a tremendous lineup over there. Make sure you head up over there, search the hashtag. It's one of those things where I wanted to invite so many Australian podcasters on our stream for this event, and it was like, I'm going to be at Ozpod. I can't do it. Do you have anything later? But that's the beauty of it, is that they have created a venue and an event that just tailors towards the podcast and the podcasting community out there. I think it's great. So make sure you guys head up over there. One of the cool things that's actually happening in Pittsburgh right now is they're actually doing what's called a pod crawl. It's basically a pub crawl, but what they're going to be doing is on Friday at 6 p.m. out there in the state of Pennsylvania, they actually are doing 6 venues with 6 live shows. And so it's going to be like a pod crawl, and they're going to be going to various pubs. They're going to have 6 different shows doing live broadcasts. And though that is from the guys from River's Edge and Awesome Cast, and there's a bunch of other people that are involved in that. So if you're in the Pittsburgh area, 6 p.m., you may want to check that out. There's actually a post on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette website that you can check out. It's a really cool feature. I think my phone's ringing in the area.
I want to talk about podcasting and International Podcast Day.
All right.
It's my customers.
One of the things that I'm doing in the Cincinnati area is having a meetup with as many of the local podcasters as I could find. I went on Facebook, and here's a little tip. If you're looking for podcasters in your area, first of all, just look on Facebook to see, is there any like name of city podcasters group on Facebook, and you might find then other podcasters. Or if there isn't, maybe you should start a group like that. Think of like the major cities near you, maybe even the smaller cities near you. But you can find podcasters that way. Some other clever ways you could find local podcasters and just ask them, hey, I discovered you are podcasting too. Let's meet up and celebrate International Podcast Day. Search Twitter for things like your city name and the word podcast, or for you can do location searches on Twitter for those who have a location on their profile, and search for anyone who has the word podcast in their bio who is within a certain location. And those can be great ways to find other podcasters. I was visiting a small town a few months ago, and I was curious, are there any other podcasters in this random small town out in the middle of nowhere? And I searched Twitter, and sure enough, there was one other podcaster in that little town. That was awesome. You can do the same thing to connect with others and have your own International Podcast Day celebrations. It's not too late. If you're watching live right now, it's not too late.
Yeah, we have a couple other cool things going on. Glenn Hebert of Horse Radio Network, he's actually hitting episode 5,000 tomorrow. And he's actually asked the IPD team to call in to talk about International Podcast Day. But can you imagine? I think he's gone, 8 straight years without missing a single episode. He has 27 hosts on his network with 10 shows. Just for his single show, he's going to hit episode 5,000, which I think is absolutely impressive. So big shout out to them. And that just happens to land on Podcast Day. Podcast Culture, at Podcast Culture on Twitter, they're actually doing a Podcast Day happy hour. And this is out in the DC area. And so they've connected with a couple stand-up comedians, and they're going to have a Podcast Day happy hour. They've sold some tickets, have a good little venue there to celebrate podcasting, and also to to meet up. And that's what the great part, like you mentioned, Daniel, is just meeting up with locals in your area that are either podcasters or podcast listening enthusiasts. This is some great quotes, Steve, that I know that people have sent us via email. I'll let you dive into some of the things that you've received over the past couple months.
Yeah, there's a pretty cool. People often send me information about their lives and podcasting and stuff. And there's been a couple of recent, 2 in particular, one from Jeff Clausen. And he says, it was a matter of time before exploring the world of podcasting. Coral wanted me to do a podcast since 2014, and she finally convinced me to give it a go. We will be launching our podcast, Live, Work, Love, on International Podcast Day, because what other day is there to release your first episode? Thank you. And there's a video from Beardcaster, and it's a very good video about not just his show, but about Podcast Day. And the one thing I really want to point out here is he says, thank you, because podcasting has changed my life. Wow, that's powerful, really powerful. So go check him out. I think guys are putting in information in the chat room so you can find more information. And he sums up by saying, thank you for declaring this fine day. Before we go on, and stick around, I've got something really cool for you here in a minute. I want to talk about kids in podcasting, because it's great to see the young kids getting involved with podcasting. And it's a great way for them to become more educated, create communication skills, and have fun. I talked to a stepfather-son podcast called Alex Goes to College. And they're both named Alex. So you got Big Alex and Little Alex. Alex is a 9-year-old boy that interviews students, professors, and business professionals to find out how the world works. It's no surprise he got interested in science at an early age. He started listening to podcasts like Brains On and Radiolab. Alex conducts the interview solo with his own questions, and then he and his stepfather analyze them after the interview. I listened to their first episode they released this month in September. And he interviewed an astrophysicist. I learned a lot. Thank you, Alex and Alex. Good luck. I mean, this is really great. And pay him a visit. It's called Alex Goes to College. So, gentlemen, I am going to let you talk about the Gratitude Award coming up tomorrow. And I'm going to prepare for a little special thing.
Well, last year we started what we call the International Podcast Day Gratitude Award. It is to recognize the podcast that is changing lives. And last year it was Katie Bowman of the Katie Says podcast that won the award and truly deserved it. Now, this is not at all a popularity contest. Last year and this year, we've designed the algorithm so that it gives everyone an equal opportunity. It's not a matter of the size of your audience. It's a matter of how engaged is your audience. And last year, when Katie Bowman put out the word to her podcast audience to ask them for reviews in iTunes, because that's the way that we measure the winner, she asked for her audience to write reviews, but she said specifically, share reviews about how, or write about how the podcast has impacted your life, what kind of change it's made on your life. And she included that, I think, in only one episode of her podcast did she include that mention. She had some other voiceover do it at the beginning of the podcast. That one mention resulted in dozens of new reviews, and review after review after review wasn't simply, great podcast, or I love this podcast, love the show, but it was amazing stuff, the kind of stuff that you would read and choke up reading, the kind of stuff that shows you what an incredible change that she was making in the lives of her audience. And this year, what we decided to do for the International Podcast Day Gratitude Award is a little bit different. If you want to check it out, it's over at internationalpodcastday.com/gratitude. Submissions are now closed. We've received all the submissions for this. But recognizing that podcasting is an international thing, it's global, we want to celebrate the internationality, and that is a word, of podcasting by recognizing the podcast with the most engaged global audience. And we'll be measuring this again through podcast reviews, because if you didn't know, when you look at iTunes and you see your podcast reviews in iTunes, or you review another podcast in iTunes, those reviews are attached to a particular country. So when you look at iTunes, you're seeing only the reviews in that country of the store you're currently browsing. There are 155 iTunes stores. Now, you can manually switch between all of them. If you scroll down in iTunes, click on a flag icon, you can switch over to another podcast directory country, and then find your podcast again, check to see if there are new reviews. You can do that 150 times if you really want to. Or use the tool that I created, which is mypodcastreviews.com, that checks all of this for you automatically, sends you regular updates to let you know when you have new reviews. So what we've done is we asked everyone to create a new free account, even if they have a commercial podcast, create a free account on My Podcast Reviews as their submission for International Podcast Day Gratitude Award. And we'll be looking to see what podcast has the most engaged global audience and the widest spread of an international audience. I don't know yet who the winner is, but I can, just looking at some of the initial data, I think I see who the winner or one of the potential winners might be. And I can see that, yes, they have a truly engaged global audience. Might not be the biggest audience, but it does seem to be the most engaged global audience. And so you'll have to come back to find out who actually won in our time tomorrow, which on International Podcast Day, it's at, remind me, Dave, 5 o'clock?
Yeah, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the 30th.
Yeah, we'll be having the announcement. I'll read off all of the podcasts that did submit themselves for the award, so you'll get to hear all the podcasts. I think we had over 50 podcasts submit. And I'll then introduce you to the podcaster who wins that award. And hopefully they can be here with us to join us for the live stream. If they can't, that's okay. We'll try and get them on at some point, certainly give them the award. Now, here's the thing. You don't win only the recognition of your peers, but you also win, for one thing, a great plaque, that International Podcast Day Gratitude Award, and it's engraved with your name, your podcast name on it. You win a free account to My Podcast Reviews as well. So if you want to see all of those international podcast reviews for your podcast, then you'll get access to that, and you get all the premium features, but you don't have to pay for it because you win the award. And you get a special audio branding package from Music Radio Creative. Music Radio Creative is an incredible company for getting audio branding, and you hear their audio branding in a lot of very professional podcasts. They do an amazing job. Mike and Isabella Russell head that company up, and they have amazing voice talents working for them, amazing production skills. And so you'll get the audio branding package for your podcast, so you can make your podcast even more amazing and more engaging as well. So it's a lot of really cool things coming for that. I'm looking forward to sharing with you the winner of that and meeting them as well, and recognizing those who have that most engaged global audience to celebrate International Podcast Day.
Yeah, I love what you're doing, Daniel, with the International Podcast Day Gratitude Award. I'm suspenseful, just so everybody knows. Daniel is the keeper of the data. Like we try and pull information from him. He's like, nope, lips are sealed, not telling. You know, it's kind of like the Oscars. You know, nothing's opened until 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on September 30th. And I'm really excited because, as you mentioned, there are some podcasts out there that have a truly international audience that, you know, they may not be the biggest show, but they have a great message. They have a great story. They are so well connected with their listeners, and they really thrive off of that. And I think that's awesome because, you know, we've heard debates year in and year out about how algorithms work, and, you know, it tailors towards one specific podcaster and not the other. But I really got to say, I think, Daniel, you've done an awesome job promoting it. utilizing your service, My Podcast Reviews. I think it's fantastic. I'm really excited to hear who it is. I have some thoughts, but I'm probably wrong, but you never know. So if anybody's interested in some of the details, Daniel mentioned, internationalpodcastday.com/gratitude. And each year we are going to be doing this award. And so each year we sort of evolve it. It's going to be something new next year with something new, different last year. So I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, so come back at 5 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow on February 100th. Now I said February. Dave said February earlier.
Yeah, sorry.
It's spreading. September 30th. Make sure you come back at 5 p.m. Pacific time to watch that. And I won't only be talking about the Gratitude Award, but I want to tell you some other cool things that you might not know about iTunes: ranking, reviews, ratings, the importance of each of those things. And I'll have some other people on with me to talk about different things. And you may have heard people say, oh, you need iTunes reviews in order to climb the charts. Or you've heard other people say, no, iTunes reviews aren't helpful at all. Don't even bother asking for them. Well, I'll share with you the importance of iTunes reviews, how you can get more, and what you can do with your reviews. And not only your reviews, but other people's reviews as well, what you can learn from those. So that and more tomorrow, 5 p.m. Pacific time, right here at internationalpodcastday.com/live.
Outstanding. That's always one of the highlights of the entire stream for me. It's kind of an emotional thing, And then I love sending out the order for the plaque and put somebody's name on it. It's just really great because they work so gosh darn hard. So give me a moment here. We are going to attempt something here. And for those of you that have known me for numerous years, you probably don't even recognize me. So we're going to help you out here because, as you know, I have always had a monstrous stash. And in celebration of International Podcast Day, I ripped it off so we can even talk more because it just kept getting in the way. So here's what we're going to do. I got a little story for you. Hopefully we can do this because my box is a little small. So we'll do this. Okay. So.
Oh boy.
Once there was a man who lived in a boat, but he never knew what he wanted to be. He thought to himself, should I be a fireman? This isn't working too good. The newspapers are small these years. Or maybe, should I be Robin Hood? You know what he decided to do? He decided to be a mobile podcaster on a boat. So he started his journey. But one day his RSS feed failed and it blew off the bow. Then one day he received a bad iTunes review and it blew off the stern. Frustrated, he didn't put forth enough effort into his show, which blew off the mast. And the boat sank. So he pod faded. And the only thing left after they raised the wreckage was the podcaster's shirt. Thank you.
The story of an international podcaster, sailor turned podcaster. That I got to say that he must have had some great Wi-Fi out there in the maritime.
They must have. That's kind of difficult to do with half a sheet and a little camera, but hope you get the point.
But I love the story, Steve, because as you mentioned, it's one of those things where as podcasters, it can be frustrating. Maybe you don't get the iTunes reviews you want. You get a negative one, like you said. Maybe you have problems with your RSS feed. Maybe you have problems with other podcatchers. I mean, it's something that that we need the resources to figure out and learn. And it's all about figuring those things out. So yeah, I love that little story. For those, I've seen that little folded newspaper trick my entire life. It's always a different story every time. So it's good to see how that can turn into a podcast story. So I appreciate that, Steve.
No problem. Now that I made a wacko out of myself, it's going to go viral. We know that. Okay. So the more promotion we can get, I don't care if I look dumb. It's cool. So what do we have in store coming up? As we've stated, we've got 33 hours of incredible content coming your way. Podcasters all around the world. We have podcasters that have been award-nominated, award-winning podcasters. We have podcasters that are in the Podcast Hall of Fame, and we have some big names for you. And each of their content is a presentation of a topic, something different. So as long as you can stay awake for the next 30 hours, please come on back and continue to pay us a visit, and we'll see what we can do. Also, and lastly, if you would like some incredible merchandise, go to internationalpodcastday.com, and there's a link there to get all kinds of fancy goodies to help promote what we're doing. Most importantly, Podcast Day is really a celebration. It's a celebration of what we love, and we love the community, and we love the industry. But most important, I want to send out the many thanks to people out there in social media land, people that have contacted us, that are really supportive and doing incredible things in the promotion of International Podcast Day. So we have approximately 7 minutes left, and hopefully our first presenter is getting ready here. And I just want to follow up and finally say, these two guys here are my left and right hand. I appreciate them. I can't do any of this without them. It takes a team. Just like in podcasting, it takes a team. It takes a team consisting of podcasters and listeners. If you don't have either one, you don't have anything. And when I turned on that radio going to Los Angeles, when this idea came up, that thing called radio really stunk. It was a bunch of garbage. It was a bunch of commercials, and it was nonsense. I hated it. The good thing that came out of that is International Podcast Day. Guys?
Yeah, my own life has been improved so much from podcasts. I had a long commute many years ago, 75 minutes one way. I would listen to audiobooks. I would listen to the radio. And I kind of had that knack or that feeling of, I wish I could have my own show and talk about what I want to talk about, because what's on the radio is either politics, sports, or local news. I don't really care about much of that, but I cared about other things. And when I discovered podcasts, wow, it changed my world. It made my driving more engaging. Even today, there are podcasts that I save. I don't let myself listen to until I have to do those tasks I absolutely hate, like mowing the yard or shoveling snow. I save those podcasts for that moment because it makes that gruesome task so much better and enjoyable, and I can be laughing while mowing the yard, depending on the podcast, or I can be inspired. I am a different person because of podcasts, and I've built some of the best relationships in my life because of podcasts. I am excited to celebrate podcasting, to celebrate podcasts, celebrate International Podcast Day together with the community. And I wish it could be like just International Podcast Year, but I know that's a bit too much. But definitely I'll be tweeting with the hashtag Podcast Day too, and looking for your tweets as well and engaging with the community. And Steve, thank you for starting this.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. It's been an honor to work. I mean, what came out is just a, you know, and I have this idea, Dave. What do you think we could do with it from 6 hours in 2014 to where it is today, where there's global events going on and there's podcasters and there's people signing up for the Gratitude Award. There's so many things that are going on right now. And thank you for your original vision. And I think we've grown in a very positive light. We're representative of the podcast community. So I love it. So to kind of shadow off Daniel, man, I got to say the way I live is different now with podcasting. Like every Monday night, Steve and I get behind the mic to record our own podcast. When my wife and I travel, whether that's down to LA, up to or out to Vegas, you know, or whether we're flying to Chicago or Anaheim for Podcast Movement, we listen to podcasts, we learn things, and we educate ourselves. And our minds have been changed about some topics and some stories. And just the power of podcasting is without question absolutely amazing. And so, yeah, I've changed the way, as you mentioned, the way I do yard work, the way I do laundry, the way I conduct myself at work, the way I travel. Everything about what I do day in, day out has changed. And that's simply just because of podcasting. Whether it's planning for this event, connecting with you guys and everybody else at conferences, going to local meetups, going to, we have a local podcast listening party group that meets once a month here. That's just a great way to connect with people. And those are things that I wouldn't have done otherwise. You know, I have my hobbies. I enjoy soccer very much. I enjoy a lot of TV, you know, the gym. There's a lot of things I do, but there's not too many things outside of podcasting that connects you quite the way that I've had. So as you mentioned, Daniel, I've made some amazing relationships, some great connections, some really true friends. And I think that's where it stands out is, you know, you can have a lot of acquaintances with your business dealings and your work situation. But I can say I've created and had a lot of relationships develop just simply out of podcasting.
Excuse me, I thought I was muted. You know, one of the things that I really appreciate, whether it's we used to go to New Media Expo or now Podcast Movement, is it's that once a year thing where we get together and you see Daniel, whatever, and you know, a big old handshake and how you're doing. That's the power of the podcast, whether it's in person or whether it's your voice over a medium to a listener. You know how many people that are sitting somewhere listening to you in their ears? That's very intimate. And it's the power of speech and the power of discussion, the power of topic that makes this thing so wonderful. And I think that's why Dave and I certainly have been doing what we've been doing for so long, because, you know, we would probably just get on Skype and talk anyway, no matter if anybody's listening or not. But it's not that way. And a part of this entire International Podcast Day is for people to get pieces of information that they may be missing, whether they need some assistance somewhere. It could be, oh, I'm really timid about getting into it. What do I really need to do? There's going to be tips, tricks, advice over the next day and a half. They're going to provide that information to you. And that's one of the exciting things. So, in summary, happy Podcast Day. Can I have a woohoo? Woo! Give me a woohoo!
Yeah, right? Happy Podcast Day, everybody. I'm very much looking forward to connecting with everybody that's going to be scheduled to present and participate in our event. But already I have connected with so many amazing podcasters and audio enthusiasts just online, just on Twitter, on Facebook, via email. I'm very much excited for it. I mean, as you mentioned, I wish it could be podcast year. You know, Daniel, it's an amazing medium. It's everything we want. So Daniel, I'll let you have the final word before we close out this first hour of Podcast Day.
It's not too late to start your celebration. Get on social media, tweet or post or anything with the hashtag Podcast Day. Talk about your favorite podcast. Go review your favorite podcast. Support your favorite podcasters. If you are a podcaster, maybe give a behind the scenes of your podcast. Do something fun with your audience. Celebrate podcasts together, whether you are a listener, you are a podcaster. And what all of us can do is really help the podcasting industry grow by going out tomorrow and today and every day and telling people about podcasts. We can become evangelists for podcasts. We can become ambassadors. Ask someone, hey, what's something you really love that you could talk about for hours and hours on end? Help them find a podcast for that thing. It may be a podcast you like. It may be your own podcast. It may be some other podcast that you discovered together. But you can change lives by connecting people with great content that will also change their lives.
I wish I had said that.
Well said.
That's why you're a public speaker. I'm not. I'm just an old man looking to retire this year. Oh, then what am I going to do? More podcasting?
Why
could
wouldn't
grow
you?
your mustache back.
No,
I
don't
can watch
encourage
it.
him. Don't encourage him. It took me 4 years to get him to shave that thing. I'm glad it's gone.
That's not fair. That's not fair. So here's how it's going to work. At the end of each hour of our broadcast, the broadcast will end so we can reset the video recording. The stream will not go away. You're going to see slides of our various sponsors and other information. And then we will bring in our next presenter, and it will be live, and away we go. And that's going to happen 33 times. So stay with us. Get a hold of your friends and your grandma. Grab a chair and enjoy International Podcast Day 2016.
See you, everybody.